Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast, brought to you by RaceForThePrize.com. North Wilkesboro All-Star Race. I dove into the research, broke everything down, and I will share that information with you. And at first, I will be very honest, as I always am, and very transparent. This is a diehards-only podcast. You really got to love this stuff. You really got to be a diehard or a lunatic to sit through this thing. And so I don't mind if some of you are exiting right now and finding your way to the aisle. But on your way to the back and out the door, leave a like, subscribe, and share. Now, if you are a lunatic and you are a diehard and you're someone who needs more than just one video a week and you really love racing, all right, welcome to the party, pal. Let's do it. Let's go over everything North Wilkesboro, and I will go with the overkill version. And if you are one of those people and somehow you have not purchased the Fantasy NASCAR spreadsheet at racefortheprize.com, which is simply Venmoing money my way, PayPaling it, or Cash Apping it. Description below has the information, also at racefortheprize.com. And I'll share with you, May. What do you think? 15 bucks for the rest of the month? 15 sound fair? Send me 15 bucks. That'll get you in on North Wilkesboro action, Charlotte action. Let's do it. Let's make it happen. Thanks for joining me. All right, let's rock and roll. You can see the optimal lineup on your screen, but before we get into that, let's just talk about the dynamics. You've got weird qualifying, you've got heat races, you've got an open race, and then you've got the main race on Sunday night. We've got rain in the area. We got 3 sets of tires, which the third really is just the rain tire, which could come into play. But the main story is the option tire versus our regular tire. The race format is 100 laps, then 50 laps, then 50 laps. The first 100 laps, everyone starts on the option tire, the fast tire that falls off. Now, during practice, qualifying, and everything else, every other previous event, you can do whatever tires you want. The only mandated moment is during this race at the very beginning. Everyone starts on the option. That's fine. If everybody's on equal tires, no big deal. I don't see any difference or anything crazy happening right there. What happens is in stage 2, which is also divided even more, at lap 100, you come and decide, all right, do I want regular tires or do I want the option tire? I imagine, based on all the data I've gone through, everyone's just going to stay on the option tire all day. Even if you have the regular tire and suffer less fall off, you are still going to be in traffic. And you're going to be buried in traffic, and you're not going to have anywhere to go. You really need to make your gains at the beginning of the run. And if the option tires pull far in front of you, the fall off is probably not going to be that significant deep in the run that you are going to be able to dig out. That's just my thought. And I think most of the crew chiefs are going to do the same way. If we had a full stage 2 without a 50 lap break already baked in, maybe something could happen. But I just don't see it. I see everybody going option. You know what NASCAR wants to do? Again, I know this is for overkill and the diehards, but what they want to do is get people on different tire strategies because of the repave and because of what North Wilkesboro already was. You can't pass this track. You couldn't pass this track. You could only pass if you had a sizable tire advantage, which we saw last year with several drivers, and we'll break that down. But when all things were equal, you just kind of went out there and ran. Now with the repave, you're just going to do even more of that. What NASCAR's hoping is if we get people on different tires, then we can get a different situation. And I don't think you're going to do that all that much. And with the 50 lap break in the middle, I think everybody's just going to stick with the soft tires. We'll see. You know, I could be wrong. Again, I'm not an engineer. I'm not, I'm not a gearhead. Most of these guys have borderline PhDs from very good state universities. So I can't pretend to know what they're thinking. But I think it's going to be a lap turn like I saw last year. And I think all the cars are pretty equal. That's just my stance. Still looking forward to the race. Now, let's break it down. Hey, hopefully I'm wrong, and we get a lot of different battles and different strategies that play out. I just don't see it happen. I think I just would take the option tire every time. First thing we'll do is we'll look at practice times from last year, because it's a very simple conversation where I can just tell you it doesn't really matter. Let me show you. Now, one of the things with the scrape is you miss out on some laps because they tick off so fast. We can get a general idea here. And if you're looking at all these practice times from these drivers, there's really no strong correlation with, I mean, you could like, oh, well, Denny Hamlin didn't have as much fall off as somebody else. Denny Hamlin wasn't very good in the race. Christopher Bell, oh, looks like he had a little bit, but look, this is fractional, folks. No, he went on 103.7 and Amarola went on 103.3. That makes, well, it looks good on the timing chart, but it didn't really amount to anything. And again, like, okay, well, on lap 23, he's 103.4, 103.2. On lap 24, they're running the same times. On lap 25, they're running the same times. And when we translate to the race, there's not really a difference. I mean, you go down here and say, well, look, Bell ran 103 on lap 25, and Kyle Larson ran a 102.8. What's wrong with Larson? Nothing was wrong with Larson. These practice laps really didn't matter all that much. There was no real solid correlation. And you can just simply see the speeds are all pretty much the same. Now, some were a little worse than others. Obviously, Justin Haley in a backmarker car is not going to have the speed of the top tier. But, the front pack was all pretty much the same. Chandler Smith is not going to have the same speed based on experience. Oh, well, how did Suarez? Well, he won the pole. And clean air is king. So this isn't like a definitive case of practice doesn't matter. Just want to note that Suarez did win the pole. And so he had clean air, and that helped him have a really good race. But I just want to make sure I'd state that. But anyway, look, practice doesn't matter. Sorry. Just didn't really tell you anything. And I can't imagine that practice is really going to tell you anything this time. The times are going to look about the same. It might. I could be wrong, right? You will have the access to the practice data and all this stuff at racefortheprize.com if people have got the May package. I mean, you could at the very least say, well, if we look at the fastest lap times, Kyle Larson busted. And Kyle Larson ran a different line in the race and was able to get through the field. We can go on about that. So if you want to take that away, that is fine. You could also argue that Joe Logano also is very fast. And when I look at the race lap by lap data, he was one of the better drivers. So I guess, if anything, where we've seen a little bit of correlation, it was that short run speed may have correlated a little bit with position. But like I said, Denny Hamlin, you would argue here, look, 15 laps in, he's still really fast. Didn't really have much in the race. All right. There's your conversation on practice. If there was something that maybe helped these drivers get into the optimal lineup, besides practice, it was that they had already raced the track. Kyle Larson was in the truck race. Bubba Wallace was in the truck race. Ty Gibbs had just run the All-Star Open. Suarez was in the ASA race, I believe. Briscoe might have been in the Cars race. He was in a Cars race. Chase Elliott, I believe, was in ASA or Cars. Have to look. So, if anything, you've got that going. But this year, we don't have a lot of entries coming down. Last year, you had 3 late model races. This year, 2. And most of the drivers that are participating in the late model race are Truck Series entries. Unlike last year, where it was filled with Cup Series regulars. But now they all know the track, and they're fine. That was their first go-around, so it wasn't really that surprising. So practice doesn't matter. Maybe the truck reps and laps, maybe those open laps that Gibbs picked up really helped him get into the groove. More experience, I don't know. It's up for you to decide. So we look at the optimals. And you ask yourself, were Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, Bubba Wallace, Eric Jones, Ty Gibbs, Daniel Suarez, Chase Briscoe the best drivers with the fastest cars? And the quickest answer was no. And that's why I told you at the beginning of the podcast that this is more for the diehards than the lunatics. I'm going to break down a race and look at all the laps where we're not really going to identify who was the fastest. We're not really going to come away saying this guy is the best, and so I can use that again. Now, the one thing you can do is look at what happened and know that, well, it's not really going to help you either, because there was a strategy move that determined the optimal lineup. Not everyone's going to replicate that strategy move. It wasn't based on speed, so you can't say this is the guy I want to pick this year. So that doesn't help you, right? Kind of tough. That's why I told you at the beginning. When I go over this optimal lineup, you're not really going to find out like, oh, this is the guy to pick. So why did Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, and Bubba Wallace and Eric Jones all end up in the optimal lineup? So I put this blue thing over here to let you know. Each of these drivers, during the early stage or early race, Ricky Stenhouse spin, they were already in the back, and so they decided to get 4 fresh tires. So when we restart on lap 20 or so, or whatever it was, they're in the back with 20 lap fresher tires, and they just walk to the front. The stage ends, they start the final stage up front, the game is over. That is it. Now, you can make an argument that Larson was diamonding the corner and had a different race line. Sure, he was good, he was fast, and that's fine. But he also benefited from having 4 fresh tires. And he even actually got a speeding penalty during that competition, or not during that Stenhouse caution. So he was dead last. So he clearly was the best driver, but the 4 tires was steroids. Reddick, Bubba, Jones. As for the rest of our optimal lineup, Ty Gibbs is a very interesting story. We'll break down his laps and kind of where he comes and goes. Now, one of the things he benefits from to get into the optimal lineup is he's starting 23rd. The reason he's starting 23rd, shucked in the field, is because he finished second in the All-Star Open and got the final at-large spot. He was not the 23rd fastest driver. He was faster than plenty of the drivers starting around him. Drivers that auto-qualified for this race based on whatever metric from previous seasons. So, having the extra reps, having a starting position that didn't necessarily reflect his seating, he was clearly going to move forward, and we'll break down how he moves forward in a second. Moving forward, we got Chase Elliott. Get you 8 place differential points. Too expensive, can't get him in the optimal lineup. Has a decent race, but I'll break down that it really wasn't anything special either. He didn't have the most speed. We'll show you how he got forward. Daniel Suarez in the optimal lineup. Starts on the pole, leads the early laps, and just remains up front the entire time. Until he gets passed towards the end of stage 1 by Kyle Larson, which is pretty spectacular. Larson drives from the back to the front. Unbelievable. And then Suarez just remains there, like everybody else. You don't really lose or gain any positions unless you have a significant tire advantage. Suarez built up these points in the kitty. He was cheap. He ends up in the optimal lineup. Chase Briscoe, similar situation. Just runs up front with Suarez the entire time, where other drivers lose more positions because of our 4-tire comers. Suarez and Briscoe lose the least. And if you're running top 4, you're picking up fast laps. We see this in stage 1. We see this in the second stage where it's Briscoe right there running in 4th position. And he gets a fast lap here or there. And those fast laps here or there go a long way, along with finishing position, to put him in the optimal lineup. Some other key notes. We'll talk about Blaney's laps. We'll talk about Chastain's laps. You're going to see these interesting things here. William Byron, Kyle Busch. So what's the deal? Why did William Byron score 13.05 and Kyle Busch get 14.05? So if you got the fancy NASCAR spreadsheet, racefortheprize.com, I got the actual speeds here. We can see the caution here in laps 16 to 20, how fast everybody was running, your optimal lineup in the yellow. But what we want to look at over here is lap 63. Kyle Busch, William Byron decide under green, slap on new tires, and see if it works. It doesn't work. Flip over here, and I'll show you their lap position. Yeah, they gained some spots, but Byron was running 9th and says, all right, Galaxy Brain, let's try this out. drops to 24th, ends up finishing the stage in 18th. Good job, dude. Kyle Busch ends up finishing the stage in 19th. He was running pretty much the same spot. Wasn't nearly as bad for him, but it didn't work. Nice try. And that's why I say, like, with the whole tire thing, all right, man, he had a huge advantage right there. Lap 61, new tires compared to old. He's going to make up a bunch of gains. It's too late. You kind of need what Kyle Larson and Reddick and those guys did. If you have a tire advantage coming out of a caution, boom, you can rock and roll, gain a bunch of spots early. You're going to be fine. Again, we can pull up the times and you can see here, that's how they got these fast laps. Just, one of those things. And maybe somebody does it, but if you do, you're more than likely going to finish towards the bottom of the pack and you're not going to score enough fantasy points. And I don't think anyone's going to try it. So there's that explanation. If you were worrying or wanted to know at home, like, oh, look at them fast laps. All right, let's break down some laps. Again, your optimal lineup wasn't really decided by the best cars, although I will argue that Kyle Larson was the best car. They just simply took 4 tires and they rushed through the field. And then they had track position going into stage 2. And then we just went from stage 2 to the end with the grid pretty much not changing. Let's look at it. Let's break it down now. The Generation X style. Break it down. All right, Kyle Larson doesn't go anywhere in the first stage. Takes the tires, actually gets a penalty, restarts, shotgun the field, and he just walks right to the front. Boom. To the lead by lap 55. And let's look at that real close. So, right, takes the lead from Daniel Suarez on lap 55. And to show you the difference on 4 tires, fun with data. What we can do is look at Larson. All right, so he restarts. Let's compare his speeds here on lap 41. So we're 20 laps into our second run with the leader, 22.3. And actually, it starts much sooner. He's got clean air. So Suarez's old tires and clean air, not too much of a disadvantage to fresh air, or to traffic. But even in traffic, here's Suarez in traffic. Lap 30, 21.7. Suarez 21.9 in clean air. And we keep playing this out, a tenth, 2/10 difference, 3/10 difference. Suarez 22.3, Larson 22, Suarez 22.3, Larson 22. And so it goes. And that's pretty much the gap that he gives up to all these guys on fresh tires. And he's the leader in clean air. He's almost giving up a half a second. What do you think the pack is conceding? So if we go into this race and you say, I'm going to take the old tire, and I say I'm taking the soft tire, and I'm going to have a half a second difference on you, 2/10, see ya, good luck with that. I'm going to pull way ahead. Now, by the time our tires equalize and maybe you have a little bit more long run speed, you're stuck in traffic, dude. You're going to catch up to me? Oh, but your tires got a little better wear, and you're going to catch up. You're going to run me down. Well, even if you plan on running me down, in stage 2, there's a 50 lap and then a break. So at what point are you going to run me down? I don't think it's going to work. I really don't. Go back to our laps to again show you. We saw Larson slicing and dicing super fast. Bubba and Reddick a little slower, but they get their way there. Takes them a little bit more time with their tires, but they get the track position. Briscoe just maintains, which again, not too much of a surprise. He had been good at these shifting short flat tracks over the last couple seasons. He's been good at these short flat tracks in the next gen car, just maintaining position. Chase Elliott maintaining position. What we'll note here with Elliott, and I've put this in the spreadsheet, we can see S1 is before the first caution, the gains they make. S1 with an asterisk is after the first caution to the end of the stage. What kind of gains did they make? Because I want to see, hey, could guys pass? If we can identify drivers that can make movements, then maybe there is something to this. And it really isn't just, hey, he took 4 tires. Now, obviously, look, you take 4 tires, you gain 23 spots, 18 spots, 12 spots. But by breaking down the data and being lunatic, diehard fantasy NASCAR guys, you are one if you're here still. I am one, obviously. Maybe we can find a diamond in the rough. And so with Elliott, we've got 6 spots, minus 4 spots, 3 spots. And we can see where he starts the stages. He starts the race in 13th. He starts the second stage in 8th. So we look and say, wow, he gains 6 spots at the very beginning. He gains 3 spots here. Maybe there's something there. The answer is, and we just look at the data, he gets most of his spots on the restart, which is what we're going to see. Some people get freight train, railroaded, locked on the outside and lose spots. Some people get in the right spot and get a bunch of spots on a restart. That doesn't really tell me that you're good at this racetrack. It doesn't tell me you have a fast race car. It just means that you're in the right spot at the right time, made the right move, and that was Elliott. So Elliott does that at the beginning, gets big gains that leads to him coming into that caution in 7th place. Lines up in the right spot, maintains position, gets down. So I guess, yes, well, he made the right moves, but it doesn't tell me that on the long run he's passing anybody, because he's not. He actually loses a spot. Loses another spot, loses another spot. But then again, bounces back, grabs some gains. It's in 7th. I believe he uses the bumper right there to get to 5th. And it's okay. He makes a little bit of gains, but these big numbers mainly are inflated because of that opening race getting in the right spot. Next, we look at Blaney's laps. You see a 5 and a 5, so we try to get excited. Let's see. There it is. Gains 4 spots right out of the gate. It doesn't tell me he's good on the long run. It doesn't tell me anything. Now, he does grab one more position and holds position, so that's fine. Here we go. We restart again. Loses some spots based on lane choices and restarts. He's running 8th. Drops back a little bit, moves back, doesn't go anywhere. Actually loses spots. Next go, again, we get a restart. He jumps from, he was technically in 8th, but he picks where to line up. 11th, so he concedes a spot to get the position he wants. And he grabs 3 spots, back to 8th. So it looks like some gains, but is it really? Kinda. So he does go from 8th, 7th, to 6th. So there was, I would argue, 3 legit spots. A couple spots gained on a restart, 2 on the restart. Ultimately, I would argue that Blaney looked pretty good. And again, he's a guy that's been good at short flat tracks. Now, the 5, I think, is a little inflated because of restart boosts, but he did make some passes on the long run. Suarez never really goes anywhere. Just maintains track position, which again tells you that your practice probably doesn't matter. Your experience probably doesn't matter. Your skills probably don't matter. Clean air, track position. That's what this thing was all about. Now you got to repave. It's going to be more of the same. The only thing that really changes it, if we get a bunch of cautions, which I wouldn't expect once they just go out there and start running, especially if we have the aero bubble rear its ugly head, which we have seen with this diffuser, aero bubble coming out. You can't get close enough really to put the bumper to anybody. You can't get close to anybody. Everybody on same tires. We're turning laps. Track position, track position, track position. Eric Jones, another one of our fresh tire buddies, doesn't quite get as far forward as Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick, but he is able to move forward on this run and get into the top 10-ish, 12th. Grab some spots on a restart, and then just rides the track position game. Gets one more spot. Nothing special. Big boost from the tires. All right, Ty Gibbs, as I mentioned earlier, I was going to explain this one. Pretty interesting situation where worth noting. So again, he starts shotgun the field because he was an all-star open qualifier. And, most of the cars that are probably starting in the back are not very good. Should not really be here in this race. So you assume he won't have a problem getting ahead of some of these guys, especially since he just did some all-star open laps. Cool, great. Gets up to 15th. Then I'm believing what happened here was he just got locked on the outside, falls back. But what's unique is he falls back to 24th, and he grinds his way back out of 24th and gets all the way back up to, 15th, 16th. From 16th, got some spots on pit road, and then gets up into the top 10 and maintains that position. There he goes, climbs to 9th. Not a bad little race by Ty Gibbs. Not surprised to see him get to 15th from 23rd, maybe even another spot or two, but he did work his way all the way up to 9th. If I did look at someone and say, oh, I'm pretty good in North Wilkesboro, Ty Gibbs, one of those guys. Joe Logano. So, like you see, 8 spots in this first section. But again, that's also inflated too because he's starting last and he's starting against the slower competition. So, this guy make those contextual citations, not just look at data, remember what happens to the race, actually watch the race. What we like about Logano is right here, these 6 spots he gains in section 2, which are pretty much legit long run grabs. And Logano probably could have won this race. He maintains position at stage 1, but he gets a penalty along with Ross Chastain, very similar situations. Ross Chastain, so we'll just look both of these guys at the same time. So Joey stays in top 5 the entire time. Ross is able to work his way forward. Very good, very solid racing. These are 2 other drivers that look really good. Ross was in the truck race. Joey Logano holds position. There's Ross. Both get penalties. So they got to restart. They are on the lead lap. And then both of them from 17th and 14th just, again, grind their way forward and are making legit long-run passes against drivers with equal tires. So pretty solid run from those 2 drivers if you want to take away something and say, hey, there's possibly something I want to get behind. The rest, there's really no point in breaking them down. Look, we're talking about practice. Denny Hamlin, Truex, not even on the lead lap. Barry tried the 4-tire thing, didn't work out for him. He was subbing for Alex Bowman. Austin Dillon tried the 4-tire thing, and he was actually running up front at the time. It didn't work out for him either. Other guys 2 laps down, 3 laps down. Stenhouse 4 laps down after being wrecked by Eric Jones. Yikes. Pretty brutal. Larson out there just making you look like a fool. So we've broken pretty much everything down. I don't think there's anything else to do. Hope you enjoyed that. North Wilkesboro overkill. All right, thanks for joining me, guys. Like, subscribe, share. May package available. Rest of the month, I think $15 is a steal. That's 2 North Wilkesboro races, and then the triple race coming up Memorial Day weekend. It's my favorite time of the year. That Memorial Day Sunday, although I do have some commitments, I'm going to make sure I do those commitments while also balancing Monaco, Indy 500, and the Coca-Cola 600. And you got races on Saturday and Friday, and there's baseball, and everything is great in this world. Thanks for joining me. Blessed to have you here, especially you diehard lunatics watching this podcast. I love you guys. Trip life fantastic.